The Israel case is by far the most frustrating to try to wrap your hands around, partly because neither the U.S. or Israel acknowledges the existence of the bomb, and also because the unique nature of the U.S.-Israel alliance, or not even alliance, friendship, I guess. So it's actually really difficult to even draw concrete conclusions about the Israel case, much less figure out lessons for other cases. But I guess we'll try. Just to highlight what a beautiful, dark, twisted mess this whole thing is point to Abe Feinberg. Now, Abe Feinberg is a prominent Jewish American business leader who becomes a prominent Democratic fundraiser. He actually plays a critical role in getting Truman reelected through raising funds, and that endears him to the Democratic Party in the United States. He also is very close to a lot of the Israeli leaders. After World War II ended, he actually helped smuggle people and weapons to what was then British Palestine to enable the Jewish freedom fighters there, Jewish leaders there, to establish their own state. And in doing so, he meets a lot of the future Israeli leaders, including the Israeli Prime Minister Ben-Gurion. And when France offers Ben-Gurion and Israel this amazing deal to buy a reactor and a reprocessing plant, Ben-Gurion realizes this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But the problem is Israel's a really poor country and can't afford to pay for this technology. So what does Ben-Gurion do? He calls Abe Feinberg, gets together some of his closest millionaire friends, and they raise $20 million. And this is really to help Israel buy the French reactor and reprocessing plant. And this, without, most authors believe, without that money, Israel probably couldn't have afforded it. Now, the Americans discover that France is building this reactor in the Israeli desert in the waning days of the Eisenhower administration, so it becomes one of the first issues JFK has to deal with, and what they want to do is get American inspectors to visit the plant to confirm that it's for peaceful purposes, like Israel is saying, and so they can reassure the Arabs and the Soviets. And for obvious reasons, the Israelis are not thrilled about that idea of having Americans walking around this plant where they might discover something like the reprocessing plant that Israel says it's not building. So they stonewall JFK. So JFK gets frustrated, and what does he do? He says, call Abe. And he gets Abe Feinberg and says, can you go get Ben-Gurion to allow us to have these inspections, which to his credit, Abe Feinberg does. But throughout the rest of the JFK and LBJ administrations, Abe Feinberg is like a key unofficial advisor to the U.S. presidents when it comes to Israel. So this, I just think, encapsulates what a unique case this is, where this guy is at one point funding the Israeli nuclear program, on the other hand, helping the U.S. Deal with the diplomacy about it. So anyways, some of the U.S. concerns, one of the big ones was if Israel gets a bomb, there's no way the Arab states won't follow suit. Also, they were worried that maybe instead of getting their own bombs, what the Arab states would do was ask the Soviet Union to increase its presence in the region, perhaps even forward deploy nuclear weapons to the region and thereby increase Soviet influence in the Middle East. And I think an interesting one too is they were worried that if it was seen that the U.S. failed to stop Israel from getting nuclear weapons, the U.S. credibility with the Arab states would be destroyed. They'd say, what good are you if you can't stop Israel from getting nuclear weapons? So again, like I said, even just finding concrete consequences of the Israel program is somewhat difficult. One clear one is what I call alternative facts, which is basically, to this very day, the U.S. policymakers have to distort the truth about Israel's nuclear program to the public, to Congress, to other countries. It's hard to quantify what the cost is of this, but I think there is some cost there. More interesting one is, I think, the qualitative military edge. Before Israel gets nuclear weapons, U.S. policymakers do not want to sell Israel military supplies directly for fear of antagonizing the Arab countries. And also, even when they talk about that, they talk about doing so, they talk about maintaining a balance between the Israelis and the Arab countries. And it seems clear at first that when Israel's on the verge of getting nuclear weapons, they begin to take a different view. They have to ensure that Israel can defend itself conventionally, because if it fails to do so, it'll turn to nuclear weapons. So that's really, I think, where this qualitative military edge, as we call it today, first comes from. Now it's being sustained because of other factors too, but I just think it's interesting that was really where it first developed. Here's a bunch of issues, which I'm not going to go all through, about Israel. There's some evidence to say that Israel nuclear weapons might have played a role in, but it's hard to say for sure. The Yom Kippur War is interesting. There's been a long-standing rumor that when Israel was about to be defeated in the Yom Kippur War, it armed its Jericho missiles with nuclear warheads in a way that the U.S. could see to sort of blackmail the U.S. into resupplying it. It's still not 100% clear if this happened. It seems more likely that it didn't. But even if it didn't happen, it did have a consequence because apartheid South African leaders saw this or believed the rumor, and they said, we should get our own nuclear weapons because if we're ever about to be destroyed, we can blackmail Americans into saving us, just like they did with the Israelis. I think more generally, with the Yom Kippur War, is the Americans were conscious that Israel had these nuclear weapons, and if they were about to be destroyed, they might use them. So while there's not concrete evidence, I think this did play a role in America resupplying Israel during the war to some degree, and of course that had huge costs in terms of the Arab oil embargo that followed. But another quick one I want to highlight is I was talking to a former very senior U.S. official, and he said in his belief the fact that Israel has these nuclear weapons to defend themselves makes them more comfortable with defying the international community on things like settlements, which he believes they wouldn't do if they didn't have these nuclear weapons. I don't know if that's true, but I just thought it was an interesting thing to highlight. So turning to lessons for Saudi Arabia, nuclearized Middle East, just as we feared the Arab states were getting nuclear weapons, if Israel did, I'm sure there'd be concerns that Saudi Arabia gets the bomb, certainly maybe not the Arab states, but certainly Iran and possibly Turkey follows suit. Again, it didn't happen in the Israel case. Would it happen in the future? Hard to say. Saudi Arabia might be emboldened, again. And then reduce U.S. credibility. If U.S. can't even stop one of its closest partners in the Middle East from getting the nuclear weapons, how much credibility does it really have?